What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at Gold Sounds in Brooklyn today. We are here with Tom of Vatican. Thank you for your time today, man.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Yeah.
Anytime.
It's going to be a brutal show tonight. You guys are just
so.
going to totally decimate this whole place. It'll be a smoldering crater by the end of the night.
Maybe.
Yep. But it's fair to say you guys have had a busy couple of years because your last full release was Ache of Eternity.
Yeah.
Then you released Spawn of All, Pain Taken.
Yep.
And then you just released your new single, 31 Staples.
Yep.
You just want to give a rundown on how everything has been so far.
It's been cool. I joined the band right before we recorded that Ache of Eternity record, and the band was kind of a full-time thing before that, but we've tried to do as much as we can off each individual release and everything. So we've been touring really hard off the record and seen some actual cool growth of the band, which is cool. We just signed to a new label called 1126 Records that has helped us out with a lot of things, helped us get some cool tours and cool opportunities, and we're doing a new full length through them later this year. It's going to come out in November at some point. Yeah, I think it'll come out. We just announced a tour with Sanction and Queensway and this band Fuming Mouth. It's going to come out sometime on that tour. But everything's been cool. All the shows we've been playing recently have been awesome. This tour is the first headlining tour we've done. Real headliner, I guess, and it's been really good so far. It's been a while since we've done a full US, and outside of every van problem you could possibly imagine has happened to our van.
That's how the first tour always goes. So you're doing things right.
Yeah, for sure. But other than that, everything's been awesome.
Awesome. What I'm curious is the new single 31 Staples. Yeah. Is this a clear indication on maybe what the next full length is going to sound like, or are you going to experiment a little bit more?
That song is probably we spent maybe a year and a half writing a lot of songs trying to figure out what the record was actually going to sound like. So there's probably 3 full lengths. No, probably 2.5 full lengths worth of material that we threw away because we didn't really like the direction. Thought it was either too stereotypical or too just not interesting to one or all members of the band. And that song is probably the song that kind of drove the actual direction of the record, which is I guess say instead of just being 90s metalcore, which is how a lot of people kind of describe us, wanted to do something a little more timeless, I guess. I don't really know the right words to describe it, but really the whole thing just bites like Meshuggah and Gojira the entire time. Awesome. Just to stuff like that, but without any intelligence that those bands have. Mm-hmm. So it's all just very a very caveman version of those kinds of bands, and I think that was the thing that was the most fun to us. Whenever we sit and write, whatever, we all live super far away from one another, so we have to just kind of sit around a computer and write and trade files back and forth one another, and whatever when we play a demo for someone, whatever makes everyone laugh the hardest kind of tends to be the stuff that sticks, and all the riffs from that song were the funniest to us in a good way, the ones that just made us smile the most. So that was a very clear indication of where we were gonna go, and we followed that for the most part. Awesome. So it's still a very much a metal record with lots of hardcore in it, but just trying to not just be so many bands just do the chug chug wee wee thing, which we did for a while and probably weren't very good at, or trying to rip off At the Gates and In Flames and all the Gothenburg melodic death metal sound, and that wasn't really that entertaining to us either. So.
You ever worried that you mentioned that you have stuff that you made but just throw out? You ever worried that that's going to be a B-side track and just be the biggest hit you guys ever had?
I've been in I've been in 1,000 bands and recorded tons and tons of music, and that's definitely happened to me before. So yeah, a little bit, but a lot of those songs it's not no one will ever hear them. And I don't think they'll ever really come back. And just to be 100% frank, a lot of those songs I feel we got rid of them because they weren't actually good enough. There's probably some cool ideas that we farmed out into other songs, but I think if a lot of people heard them, they'd be oh, this is nice and fun. Mm-hmm. But if they heard our actual record, I think it's a lot more entertaining, for lack of a better word, and a lot more interesting, at least to me.
Interesting. So you mentioned you kind of took a new approach to this album. So it's fair to say were maybe the other albums, I know you came in during Ache of Eternity, but is it fair to say that maybe there was more of a formula in the previous catalog, and with this new record you kind of stepped outside of your comfort zone a lot more?
A little bit, I guess. The band before I joined only really had one real release before that. It was an EP called "Drowning the Apathy Inside," and I don't really think the band had a formula then. If anything, I think that one of the things I tried to bring to the band was some kind of a formula, like more structured songs, like having like discernible choruses and like actual like repeating parts and things like that, which the band definitely had elements of beforehand. But I think that's something I tried to like really push into the band when I joined, and then everyone else kind of like definitely got on board with like the same kind of thinking. So definitely stepping out, like I don't know if it was like stepping outside of like an old formula as much as like actually like figuring out what the strong points of the band were and like really like honing in on them rather than just like we have a song that we still play all the time called Pain God that's like 5 minutes long, and it's really cool and everything, but it has like 10 or 11 different sections in it that are all that never repeat, and that's all just like too much stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just like trying to like hone in on the stuff that's actually cool and build a song around that rather than like cool part, song's over.
Yeah. What I'm curious is there ever something, because you mentioned that with this album, like kind of said that this album kind of helped the band develop a formula. So does each song call for a new approach, or is there a usual template that you always have to like follow?
In every band I've ever been in, I have like a very specific template that I follow, and it's always a bad idea to do it. So every song that like, so we wrote like half the record over like a period of, I don't know, maybe like 4 months, and then we had a tour in Florida with this band Attila.
Yeah.
And all the shows were like 2 hours from our bass player's house, so we would play the show, drive back to his house, wake up in the morning and like write for a few hours, and then go to the next show. And all the songs that got written in that time frame, which is like the latter half of the record, all of those songs definitely started with like a very specific formula that I have, and then the rest of the band like were the ones to like break us out of doing that, because like I always like try to like start a song with like a cool part, and that cool part comes back at the very end of the song, and there's like verse, chorus, big outro. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's just like where my brain goes every time. So I think they don't all have like, there was like a definite risk of all of it getting kind of stale, and everyone else in the band was like the ones that like prevented that from happening. Because if I had just written every single thing by myself, it would have gotten very, very, very formulaic. So yeah, I think that's kind of how we're. I don't know if that answered the question the way you
definitely
wanted,
did.
but
Yeah. What I was curious about is some of your previous tours. Like I know that you did like a couple rounds with Kublai Khan. I know that
Yeah.
you've toured with like a Judiciary, and so like I feel like you're the Sound of Vatican. You guys have like death metal elements that could appeal to the Morbid Angels and Deicides, but like I feel like you could appeal to like a Whitechapel or Chelsea Grin or a band like Code Orange or Vane or something like that. It's fair to like. Do you hope to like maybe make music that will appeal to multiple audiences, or do you just write for yourself and like more or less and are kind of more focused on staying within one sort of element more or less?
I think everything that we write, we want it to like appeal to as many people as possible. But at the same time, like I think music is like a super like, for me it's like a very religious thing, almost like I only want to do things that like I really love. I don't really care about like the only people who get to have an opinion about like the songs that like my bands write are like the people in my bands, because I've been in like some bands that had like on like really big labels, had like really big budgets, but then because of that we had like lots of people's hands in the pot, and a lot of people who weren't involved in the music making creative decisions, and that's not necessarily it's like I totally understand why that world has to exist. And I actually don't have a problem with it existing, but for like this band, that's not something that I would like ever really be concerned about, which is one of the reasons why I like the label we're on, 1126 Records, because it was just like they offered us a deal, we got a budget, we got to make the record we wanted, and they were just like, the creativity is all for us, like the business is them, but we get to make all of our own creative decisions down to every aspect of it.
That's a good way of doing it.
It's pretty awesome. Which is the good thing about signing like an indie label. They tend to like want you to be the band that you were when they picked you up. They're not really trying to mold you into something else necessarily. But yeah, I definitely, we want to like, we've already tried to like tour as broad as we can so far, and hopefully we can like keep doing that. And I do think that our record doesn't have like one specific group of people in mind. outside of just people that like music with like big loud guitars. I think there's something in there for everybody, and I would hope that we can like keep doing that. And as far as like the touring that we do with other bands, like I would love to just do like a tour with like just like a bunch of death metal bands, or like we've done tours with just bands that are very straightforward hardcore, and like everything in between. It always seems to like work pretty well in our favor. So I do think we're maybe not the perfect band for that kind of thing, but like definitely a band that can fit in like any world, whether it be like playing like This Is Hardcore or like whatever the successor of Warped Tour ends up being, something like that.
You could do that, and then you could at the same year appear on Summer Slaughter or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely do something like that.
Yeah. Another question I really am curious about is coming from Georgia. I know you're from Savannah, and I know that there's a phenomenal, just with history of Mastodon coming from there,
Yeah,
Royal Thunder, Seven Dust, so many great bands from Georgia. Is there like a scene that Vatican is sort of like affiliated in with down there, or did you guys just want to get like out of your home state?
We're not affiliated with like anything there. So like, so I'm from Atlanta. The rest of the band is from Savannah. Savannah has like it's a small town, and it's a lot of like transient people because it's a college town. So the people come in and out very fast. So there's not really like, a group of like old heads that keep everything going.
Yeah.
And like, if anything, some of the people in our band are some of like the old heads in Savannah. And then like in Atlanta, as far as like the hardcore scene, like music like ours doesn't work there, period. And then I think like in general, like in Atlanta, bands that sell 2,300 tickets on the West Coast in like the Bay Area will sell 500 in Atlanta. Like
Really?
it's an awesome city with like really, really great music, but the scene is not as big as people think it is. Okay. And with Savannah, it used to be like a place that like every tour, when they needed like a good like B market city to go to, it was like a guaranteed like great show, and it's just not that anymore. There's like not consistent venues for like DIY shows, like 300 cap shows. There's not really like there are a few bars and there are a few like really good bands, but there isn't like a big thriving community to me anymore. And in Atlanta, there definitely is one, and there are a lot of great venues and a lot of great bands, but it's not nearly as big as people think it is. But like the bands that are there are awesome.
Yeah, of course.
Like I know you like mentioned Mastodon, and, like Kyle S is from Savannah. But as far as like smaller bands, there's like Slow Fire Pistol, Symbiote, Microwave, Bliss. There's
Royal Thunder.
Royal Thunder is a great band. I think to me like honestly one of the best bands in that area that I'm always very shocked doesn't get the recognition that I really think they deserve, because I think both their records are really, really, really good. I don't really understand why they didn't like take off and become like the next Mastodon, because they're big.
You should see Royal Thunder when they play here.
I bet it is, but that's the thing is like I see them in Atlanta where like the community is just much smaller than like playing shows in the Northeast.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that there's like I have a great friend that lives in there, and like the way he was telling me about it, it almost seems like it's Ozfest 24/7 down there. So it's great to like maybe get another perspective on it.
Well, I will say that like as far as like, so when I was the band that I said I was in earlier, like the band that had like that was on like a big label and all that, like we played like that was like a butt rock band straight up. So we played shows with like Seven Dust and with like Ozfest style bands there, and those shows popped off really hard. There's definitely like a scene and community for that, but they are still smaller than they would be in other places. That's my only thing. Is like there's a 1,000,000% a good scene there, but like we just that tour that just came through is called like the Rockstar Disrupt tour. It was like the thing that was supposed to replace the Warped tour there.
Okay.
It was in like a half empty giant shed. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And granted, that tour kind of did that way everywhere, but like that's just part of the reality of the city.
Yeah.
So I hate saying that because I love it there, and I love going to shows there, and I want like bigger and bigger shows there. And there are people there's a venue called the Masquerade that gets lots of cool shows there, and the people that work there try really, really hard to like bring the best tours they can, and they do well in that regard. But I think it's just like a fact of like that scene at this point in time that it's just not as big as it was at a certain point. When I was younger, when I was like a teenager, it was every great tour came through there, and it was always awesome. And now most tours still come through there. They're just not as big as people think.
Yeah. Fair enough. And I have 2 more questions for you. If that's cool. I said we got to do a quick gear rundown.
Yeah.
I haven't asked that question in a while, and
You're
I've
good.
been craving for it. So, what is the weapon of choice? And like, do you use the gear that you use because it suits the style of music that you play, or is it just something that you picked up and felt the most comfortable with, and that's why?
In this band, I think everyone would say we use the gear that we use because it fits like this particular style. Every other band I've been in, I just used what was like funniest. Like I had like anything that was like really pointy and like flamboyant and stupid. But in this band, me and the other guitar player both use like ESP guitars with different lace pickups in them, which are like normally ESPs have 81 and 85 active EMG pickups, and these are like a passive high gain pickup, and we like that a lot. You don't have to worry about batteries and things like that, and it's the tone's a little like meatier. So then I use the second edition of the PV 5150 for a head out of a Mesa cab. Our other guitar player uses the 5153 out of
Is that tube or solid state?
it's tube.
Okay.
We've talked about doing like the digital thing, like the Axe FX and Kemper thing, and I don't know if we're really there yet, but right now everything's tube. And then he uses this custom cab that a guy in our town built. That's similar in my opinion to like an Orange 412, and then pedals we each just have like a delay, like reverb, any kind of like tube screamer kind of sound. I think he uses an OCD. I use a pedal from Walrus, and then I use like a crazy looper to like make stupid noise with. Okay. Then for our bass player, he uses this big giant fucking Warwick bass that looks really sick, and then he's the one with like the most crazy gear. Like he has like the Warwick bass, like dark glass pedals, which are like the thing for bass distortion now, and then I think it's like an Eventide bass head, some crazy super nice solid state bass head. Bass players get to use a solid state head and it works out fine. I wish I could use one that actually sounded cool.
Yeah. Well, I feel like bass is such a particular instrument in terms like, if you mess up a note, people are going to hear it. It doesn't matter if you're playing smooth jazz or straight up grindcore, people will hear if you mess up on the bass.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, if bass goes away for a second, if something cuts out, it's like very obvious, and it's a massive bummer.
Yeah.
When it happens, because then suddenly it feels like everything, everything that you felt.
Yeah.
Like physically, like the air hitting you is all gone.
Yeah, and you need the right gear for it too, because too much bass is also a bad thing.
Oh yeah,
the room will
for
feel
sure.
like an earthquake is happening, and then you don't want too little.
Yeah, we've definitely played a few shows on this tour where like the bass was just like mixed way too loud, and like the sound and like the front of house and everything. It was just like grinding your brain in half. So yeah, I totally understand that feeling.
Yeah, and I mean, I once, somebody was once feeling like the bass on like the bar stool, and like, needless to say, that makes for a terrible tragedy. And the final question I'd like to ask you is kind of going back to the songwriting process, because it's the hardest question I ask every artist I interview.
Okay.
How do you know when a song is done?
You normally, when the arguing, if you're in a band, when the arguing about it like has really dialed down to a minimum, I think people tell you like it's what's like the stock answer is like
it's never finished, it's just abandoned, or that's either what I get, or it's just a feel thing.
Yeah, okay. The real reality that anyone will tell you that's like is whatever the deadline is like 3 days after that deadline.
Okay.
Because like we get to a point now like where when you sit in front of like Pro Tools or Cubase or whatever you use to record it, you can have an unlimited amount. You can do anything to a song, anything you want in like 3 minutes. So when you have infinite possibilities, you get you're like paralyzed by everything that's in front of you, because you're like, there's so much I can do here. So you'll work on it forever and ever and ever. That's why people say like it's never really done, because even now like I listen to our record and I could list off like 15 things that I would change about it right now, but it's already turned in. I can't do that. So that's the real thing, is like it's done because I had to give it to someone else who needed it for something. So that, for me, at least in like the professional world, it's done when the deadline hits. And then like in like any other world, it's just like, I don't know, when you get bored enough, when you're tired of fucking doing it.
That's another style.
Yeah.
I mean, the funniest, I interviewed the band Animus, this
Yeah,
great
yeah,
up-and-coming tech death band. And, like, their singer was just like, oh, that's easy when I get the final mixes back. I was like, fair enough.
He's definitely not wrong.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So before we go, I'd like to thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, man,
Really
thank
looking
you.
forward to the show tonight. Is there just anything else you would like to promote in terms of tours, or when did you say we could be expecting the new record?
Yeah, so we're doing a tour in the fall in November with Sanction. It's their record release tour. It's going to be us or them, Queensway, us, and Fuming Mouth, and we will have a new album out on 1126 Records sometime during that tour. We're like nailing everything, all the details down for that now, but it will be out on that tour.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, man, thank you so much.
Everybody, we are here with Vatican. Be sure to pick up new music coming out very soon. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.